Negotiations are set to begin on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement. Let's take a closer look at that deal. The first phase began on January the 19th and is due to last 6 weeks. That's when Hamas is expected to release 33 Israeli captives held in Gaza. In exchange, Israel has agreed to free nearly 1,900 Palestinians from its prisons. At least 600 aid convoys are also due to enter Gaza every day, and Israeli forces withdraw from populated areas, allowing displaced civilians to return. In the second stage, the remaining captives are to be exchanged for more Palestinian prisoners. Israeli forces are due to fully withdraw from Gaza, and a permanent ceasefire is to be established. And in the last phase, the bodies of captives are to be returned to Israel, and the focus shifts to the reconstruction of Gaza. Marwan Bishara is Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. He joins us now from Doha. Marwan, when it comes to the ceasefire process, should we be looking more at what Trump and Netanyahu actually do rather than just what they say?
Oh, absolutely. Especially because both of them tend to be bombastic. And certainly Netanyahu has proved to be a pathological liar. And when it comes to Washington, his attempt at pleasing and appeasing, and it seems like he's the best friend of the United States. It's all, of course, deception and part of his public relations campaign, because he's in a very, very weak position in Israel. Just to give you one or two examples, he prolonged his visit to the United States in order to escape his trial. He had a session, a court session this week, but he kind of circumvented that by, justifying it that he's in Washington. He's also, as we all know, been blamed in Israel for the October 7 attacks and remains so. He's not very popular, and his coalition might implode any day if he doesn't deliver on some of those false promises he gave some of his coalition partners. On the other hand, you have an American president who is like a peacock, right? I mean, he's bombastic like there's no tomorrow. He continues to pride himself, to boast of having won even the swing states. And look at him now, he's just kind of giving ultimatums to every possible important ally of the United States and nemesis of the United States, like China, Canada, Mexico, even the European Union. So this is a meeting of total dissymmetry. So it doesn't matter what Netanyahu really says. At the end of the day, he is going to Washington to pay his respects to a very powerful American president while he is a very weak Israeli prime minister. And what transpires between them has very little to do with what Netanyahu has been telling us the last few days, and everything to do with the dynamics of the meeting tomorrow.
Okay, Marwan, just stay with us for a moment. We're just going to listen to what Donald Trump has said in response to a question about the ceasefire agreement. Let's listen.
On what?
On the Middle East, do you think the ceasefire?
I have no assurances that it'll hold. I mean, I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold.
Marwan, Donald Trump seemingly quite vague in his reply there. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is famous for this, saying how things are so difficult and so challenging. And when he actually manages to do something, and then he gives himself a lot of stars for being able to overcome the impossible. He said that a lot, by the way, about peace in the Middle East, about that before the Abraham Accord, and then, of course, gave himself several stars for having Bahrain or the United Arab Emirates sign an agreement with Israel when they have never really been in a state of war with Israel. But be that as it may, look, I think he really wants the ceasefire to continue. And he doesn't want to fight Biden's war. That's for him, that's what it is, like the Ukraine war. These are Biden's war. And how many times have we heard him saying that he doesn't want to get involved in these sorts of wars, and he should actually be commended for walking away from wars. So we know him to be that one. But that doesn't mean he's any less radical, extremist. It doesn't make him any less aggressive when it comes to the Middle East. What it does make him, Gary, is And a powerful American president that looks at what's going on in the Middle East and wants to pursue an American policy that serves American interests, not necessarily or not only Israeli interests. So unlike Biden, he's going to be assertive. Unlike Biden, he's going to tell Netanyahu what Netanyahu needs to do and how he needs to get with the program. And my sense is that he wants to serve Israel the way he wants to serve Israel, not the way Netanyahu wants him to serve Israel. Because Netanyahu has used him between 2016 and 2020 and then used Biden. In fact, just to be completely clear here, Netanyahu thinks American presidents are useful idiots to Israel. In fact, he thinks America and Americans are stupid. A majority of Israelis in the polls consider a majority of Americans to be naive and gullible. So he actually, on the record, Netanyahu is on the record saying, you know, the Americans don't worry about them. I can manage them. I can mend them the way I want to. But here in this case, Trump, after 4 years of experience with Netanyahu, is going to put his foot down and say, no, you're not going to use me. You're not going to exploit me. I'm not your useful idiot. I want to serve Israel the way I think is in the best interest of the United States. That involves perhaps the ceasefire. That involves expanding it to kind of Abraham 2.0 with normalizations of relations with Saudi Arabia. And that could even involve negotiations with Iran rather than, as Netanyahu wants, bombing Iran. Because bombing Iran does not necessarily serve today the interests of Trump or American policy in the Middle East. So we're going to see clashes between allies. We're going to see Trump put his foot down. And we're going to see Netanyahu with very few options but to either lie to Trump or get with the program. Because Trump will probably promise him that there's a number of political parties in Israel that will go into his government if his fascist, fanatical partners decide to leave the government. And he will leave him no choice but to accept his diktats. And his diktats will involve whatever his son-in-law proposed 5 years ago this week, by the way. It was at the end of January 2020 that Jared Kushner came out with his really fiasco of a plan. But it is a plan that is still on the table for the United States, for the Trump administration. And it is a plan that the radical Israelis will accept because it's a plan that foresees half of a Palestinian state on half of the West Bank and also involve normalizations of relations with the Arab world. I think Netanyahu will have very little choice but probably to take that.
OK, we'll leave it there. Marwan Bishara, thanks very much for joining us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.